Welcome back to today's episode of Unapologetic Living. I'm Elizabeth. I'm excited to have and we just met really through the internet, which is the wonderful thing about the internet. Um, Brownell Landrum, is that right? I want to make sure. Is that how
That's
you?
exactly right. That's
Okay,
exactly right.
good.
I always tell people it's like a brown L. That's the easy way to remember my name. That was
Oh, right, yeah,
yeah, it's
that's
an
yeah.
L that's brown. It's a brown L. So
Yeah, so I got your email and it's interesting. I just want to share a little bit about Brownell, and definitely what sparked my curiosity is that she's the author of a book called The Art and Science of Wishing, the founder and creator of the Cosmic Wish Experiment, which I know that, and one of the things, and a couple of things that when I was digging around on your website are that, when we talk about a wish, how you share that it's different than a prayer or a goal.
right.
And I think, and then I'm curious about how it connects and how would you relate it to, the work and art of manifesting.
Right.
Um, uh, But a friend had just recently reached out because I think you have what is it called? The Cosmic Wish Circle.
It's called the Cosmic Wish Experiment, and then within that you can start a Cosmic Wish circle. Right.
Okay, so a friend had just reached out to me. She does some biofield tuning work,
Yeah.
tuning field work. Okay, biofield tuning fork work in town, and she's done some work learning to be a medium, and then she went down to recently down to Austin, Texas to learn how to read blindfolded. So she's doing
Wow.
some cool stuff. She started a
Yeah.
therapeutic preschool here for kids with autism. Hence, after listening to the telepathy tapes, she thought I might better be able to communicate with my kids if I became a medium and, could
Cool.
access these other realms.
Yeah.
And I think of like when I think about wishes and manifesting and prayer, it's all kind of like under that umbrella, that same force,
Realm or whatever. Yeah.
whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
God energy. And so just tell me a little bit, about your work, what birthed this work, what inspired this work, and like what was the journey up to this point? In the
Yeah.
authoring of your book and the creation of this cosmic wish experience or experiment, because I don't know, maybe it was always something that you thought about even at 15.
Not really, not really. And one of the things I think will be fun too when we get there is to see how it weaves into what you're doing, right? Because you've got your book and you've got your mission of healing and yoga and all the things that you do. And you're gonna have to clarify all of that. But it'd be fun to weave into that, right? Because I think there's some overlap in that, right? Because that's also in a realm of, improving and connecting and all of those kinds of things. So um I guess the simplest place to start out is that as you probably saw when you looked at my website, that I kind of cover a lot of ground in terms of all the things that I write about, right? So I've written fiction and nonfiction. I've written screenplays. I've written all these different kinds of books, and um, but none of them, nowhere do you see that I'm a scientist, right? It doesn't say, oh, PhD in science. I mean, I've got an MBA. What good is that, right? And it's corporate background. And so I like to kind of make sure it's clear from the beginning. I'm a storyteller. I'm not a scientist. So I'm kind of like your average person that got curious about science and then just got crazy about it as I was doing this. So what was happening was I was going through a really interesting experience in my life, and I was also writing a semi-autobiographical novel called A Love Story to the Universe. And that one was this really wild story. And I kind of positioned it, and totally fiction. Well, I say semi-autobiographical, but I'm kind of in this magical realism world that's written from the point of view of what I call the upstairs. So if you've got guides or you've got energies upstairs, and then how they're looking at us going, what are y'all doing down there? Um, and so I was writing that, and I wrote that book in 4 parts because life is kind of like that. and as I was writing, I started to get into the fourth part. Decided, I was actually personally making a wish and trying to think about wishes and how wishes work. And so I thought I'm going to write this magical world of the wishing realm. So like if you're kind of upstairs and you're like, well, people make a wish, what happens, upstairs when that happens? And so I created this realm that I called Estrella. And there's wish fairies, and then they wait for people to make wishes, and then they decide how they're going to allocate the wishes. And they have a whole community where they have a cosmic wish cafe and a history of wishes museum and all these kind of cute things. So I was just in this world. And when you're a writer and you're creating those kind of fantasy worlds or whatever, you have to do world building, right? You have to make decisions about, well, okay, well then what is a wish and how do I decide that? So I was trying to decide, like you were saying, difference between a wish, a prayer, and a goal, which I'll get to in a minute. But I'm writing about this, and then one night, sometimes one weird thing I do is I listen to science lectures if I can't sleep. And so I was listening to science lecture on neuroplasticity. And as I'm listening to this, I'm starting to think like, is there science in wishing? And instead of me to sleep, it woke me up, like in more ways than one. And so I started doing some research on the science of wishing, and that led me to write this book, shameless plug, and where I quote over 70 different scientists. So it was pretty wild. It's like one thing that I kind of like ask people is like, did you realize every time you make a wish, you engage over a dozen different sciences? So that's
No.
pretty cool stuff, right? So anyway, that's kind of how I got exploring into the science of wishing.
So just diving into wishing. I know we talk, many people think, and I know you mentioned it on your website, blowing out birthday candles, right? We've been taught to make
Right,
wishes over time, or you toss a coin. I remember going to the mall or different fountains, and you would make a wish and toss a coin in, and
right,
then the other one that comes to mind is the wishbone when you
right,
pull the wishbone and you make a wish. Oftentimes I don't know if I've ever thought, have they come true or not? Like,
right,
I
right. We
mean,
don't necessarily put that anchor to it, right?
no, and I don't necessarily know that, I would remember all of those wishes. Like we just had a wishbone in our chicken the other night, and I can't even remember what I wish for. And I think it's the bigger side gets their wit, right? I can't.
Right, right.
So,
If
and I
I
don't know
remember
if
that
you,
from a kid, I'm a vegetarian now, so I haven't had one of those in ages. But yeah, when I was a
and I
kid.
don't even know if you make the wish before you pull the wishbone or after you get the big side. I'm not sure.
I think it's as you're pulling, but who knows? But that is important though. It's an important aspect because what you're talking about is the rituals around wishing. And so that delves into anthropology, right? That a lot of these things have been around for hundreds of years, thousands of years, maybe even since the beginning of time, some of these rituals that surround wishing. In fact, if you kind of look back into some of the research, some of them are like blowing out candles on a birthday cake are air and fire. So they're using certain elements back into the history. And that means that it's actually part of it, and there's some science that's kind of frontier science that says, is that part even part of our DNA? Like how much of that carries with us genetically, not just socially, which would be sociology, which is a different science, right? But how much of that is part of our DNA? So yeah, so some of that's rituals, and then some of them are kind of more often. Like a lot of people, when they see a certain time on the clock, like 11:11, they might make a wish,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And they go, "Oh, wait, that's a time for me to make a wish." So yeah, so that's exactly right. So I just wanted to interject that that's the anthropology part of the science.
So when so I mean, I know and then you also think about prayer, right? A lot
Right.
of people will ask for, or they want to attempt to manifest a specific thing. I can recall specifically, my daughter wanted a bigger TV. She wanted a bigger TV, and I was like, okay, it didn't matter to me one way or another whether we got a bigger TV. I also had faith that we would get a bigger TV. I didn't know when because it wasn't a high priority on my list. And I kid you not, 2 days later, I was teaching yoga. and this woman was giving away her TV because she was getting a new one that was bigger than the TV she had. Well, it just so happened the TV she had was bigger than the TV we had.
I love that
Yeah,
story. See
and
that?
so like, is that a
Yeah.
wish? Because it wasn't like we were like, "Ooh, I wish," but we were, and maybe it was more of I wish. She just said she wanted a bigger TV, and I just like to say the universe provided whatever. Like the message was
Right.
out there to the ethers, right? Which
Yes.
to me connects us all.
Yes.
And literally, I mean, within 72 hours, I had picked up a TV from this woman. It worked perfectly fine. We had it for 5 years. And then we upgraded to, an even bigger TV. Um, and I haven't bought one. I've not bought a TV.
That is wild. That is
Like,
wild.
yeah,
See, that's
even the bigger TV that we have was supposed to be my son's from his dad, but now my son, he got married, he got a bigger TV, and we can have this, like I haven't bought a TV. And so is that
well,
a
see, and
wish?
that's a fun example, right? Because it there's so many elements to that story. First of all, there is I'll just explain the difference between a wish, prayer, and a goal, right? Because that's a simple, that's a framework that we can talk about and then put it within your thing, within your example. Is a goal is generally something that you can set a plan to do, right? You can say, okay, I'm going to go on this trip, or I'm going to get this degree, or I'm going to run a marathon, or I'm going to lose 5 pounds, or whatever it is, right? That's usually something in your control. You can set a plan to do. And then a prayer is usually for things outside of your control, right? So it's like, okay, there's nothing you can do, there's nothing more you can do. It's outside of your control. And so what's really interesting, and then a wish is somewhere that beautiful in between place, right? So it includes the things in your control. It also includes the things that are outside your control. And it allows for the fact that there's an opportunity to be outside of your control. And if you had said that your daughter's wish was a goal and not a wish, right? Then if it was a goal, it could have been, okay, save this much, we can cut back on this, we can make this plan, we can put a budget together, maybe you give her some tasks to do to achieve that, or some way to save money or some way to make money. That's a goal, right? So that's how you get the bigger TV if it's a goal, right? If
Yeah.
it's a prayer, you're just throwing it out there saying, okay, I pray because I can't afford it and I can't do it, and I'm going to pray that it manifests. And and that's feels a little out of your control, right? I mean, by definition, a prayer is out of your control. But the wish part is where it allows for either and kind of both, right? You were there at the right opportunity, and it happened for you. You also allowed for what I call cosmic collaboration, which is knowing that there are forces outside of us that collaborate with us once we know our wishes. And the one thing about your daughter's wish that's really so nice is that it was very clear. And it was also very clear that you knew you got it, right? It wasn't just, something really vague. It was very, very clear. So there are things with that automatically add a little science to it, if you will, because you were opening up to the fact that there's a force outside, and you can call that a spiritual force, or you can get into quantum physics and talk about all the little nuances that happen, in that kind of, some of that's frontier science, but there are studies about non-locality and forces outside of us, and really, really interesting, research that's some scientists listening might go, no, 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 what are you talking about? But there's some cool stuff in that area. So that's a really good example. Now, if it hadn't happened, then or not, or at least in the way that you saw, then it might have veered more into goal, right? If it's something she really wanted, and then she could repeat it. Because if she says it once, then it's out there, but if she repeats it, then you start creating what's called, and that's what neuroplasticity is. When you repeat a wish, then you are confirming to yourself that you want the wish. You're confirming to that outside source that you want the wish, right? And you are also activating what's called the reticular activating system, which meant you would be looking for an opportunity to get that TV. Your brain would be for looking for that, right? So you activated all those with just one simple wish, which is just so cool. And the other aspect of what you did, which I think what you and your daughter did, is you were in partnership with that outside force, right? And if depending on where you are, and this is where some people listening are going, no, I'm straight science, Brownell, you're way off into the woo territory. And some people that are into the woo are going, yeah, I'm totally with you, um, that either woo or religion or however. But in a way, it also was validation from your guides, your God, your spiritual aspect, whatever terminology you want to use, saying, I'm here with you. I'm looking out for you. I'm working with you. I'm trying to give you opportunities to know what you want so that I can help you get what you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, all right, so you mentioned the neuroplasticity, you mentioned the reticular activating system. I know, that often, right, is the thing that pops on when you decide you want a specific car and you see those cars everywhere,
That's
right?
exactly what it is. Yeah.
Um, but now, like in relationship to say, is it, I don't know, is it, like in my book,
Yeah.
on day, I think it's I think it's the first day because my book is broken down into 29 days. At the time, it was, I wrote it during, or I created these little videos during a leap year of February. So it was all
Ah,
in self-love. Wasn't partnered at that time. And I wanted just individuals in general, but like you don't have to have that partner to find love, right? It doesn't have to
right.
be. So how can you find that and cultivate that? And the first one is a mantra, choosing a mantra, like I am
Yeah.
lovable, I am worthy. Uh, in following the I am with a statement as though you already have it. Is that how you see the wish as well? Like making the statement as though you already have it, like I have the TV? Is there some sort of versus I wish for? Does that make sense? Because I
Yeah,
know
I know exactly. I know
it's not
exactly what
it's
you're
not
asking.
Bruce Lipton. I think it's Joe Dispenza. Like you've already taken like live as if you're living as if you're sinking into the sensations of what it would feel like to already embody the thing.
Yeah.
Or
And there's some interesting science on that from kind of two ends of that. Okay. So this is where that is a very can be a tricky thing to navigate. You do have to see yourself in that situation. If you're back in the caveman days or the early settlers and they're collectively wishing for rain, yes, you want to buy some galoshes, right? You want to be prepared for that rain that when it happens, right? So you want to be able to see yourself in that situation that your wish happened. However, I don't know if you're familiar with Andrew Huberman. He's a
yeah.
neuroscientist,
Mhm.
right? And he says, yes, be careful because you can't assume it happened because then your brain isn't going to work to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't go, yes, I already have this partner if you don't have a partner. There's a disconnect in your brain, number one, and that can be tricky. And it's also doesn't allow your brain to find the partner because you're not looking for the partner, right? The reticular activating system isn't looking for that partner.
Hmm.
So there's a tricky balance between that, if that makes sense. And there's some I even have a chapter in my book that I call the problems and pitfalls with wishing. And that is when people get to the point of thinking, well, all I had to do is wish for this or do this, and it's going to happen. And I'm going to buy that house I can't afford. Or I'm going to jump off this, cliff onto this, and know that I can fly, even though I'm going to build my wings. And there's a nuance to that. Yes, we have to know we have to take some steps. We can't be afraid to take steps toward what we want. However, there's a higher mortgage rate default among some of those people because they bought a house they couldn't afford and they acted like I already have the $500,000 a year job. I can buy this house that's not in my current budget. Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I guess also there has to be some element of faith.
That's where it gets kind of tricky. This is where your own personal relationship with whatever that force is, right, comes into play. I have a phenomena that I write about in the book that I call the blue balloon. phenomenon. I'm really curious, with all your knowledge, what you think about this. So imagine you're driving home and you have this vision of a blue balloon in your driveway, like kind of obscure thing to visualize. And then all of a sudden you drive home, pull in the driveway, and there's a blue balloon. What brought that there?
The
How did
blue
that blue
balloon.
balloon?
Now, okay, well, I guess the first question that comes to mind for me is it just a blue balloon that is one that a kid holds on to, or is it a hot air balloon?
Well, I was just thinking like a kid
Okay,
holds on.
okay, something that you would just, yeah, just like a
Not, I
helium
mean, it's
balloon.
an ordinary object, but it's not an
Yeah,
ordinary object. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's not like you're going to expect a blade of grass on your driveway. You know what I mean? It's
right,
not like,
right.
yeah, but it's
Yes,
not, it's in the realm of reality. I
right,
don't know
yeah,
how often we'll have a hot air balloon in our driveway.
right. I know. Yeah.
That would be a really interesting wish, but go ahead.
So your question is, what would I would wonder where it came from?
Right. And then the question is, where do you think it came from? How do you think that happened?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I would wonder, is it just floating in the grass because it's lost most of its air? Um,
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, because there are different answers to the question, right? One is that you manifested that balloon. Like you thought about it and then you made it happen and you made it appear
oh,
because you thought
oh,
about it.
okay.
You know what I'm saying?
We're going backwards a little bit because we already thought about the balloon in the car. And then we
Right. We
pull
thought
up and
about
the
the balloon.
balloon is there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Right.
I guess for me, yeah, I'd be like, whoa, I've really manifested. That's crazy.
That's one
Was just
one
thinking about a blue balloon.
Right. That's one possible
That's
answer.
weird.
There's like a dozen possible answers, but that's where it's fun, right? Is that another possible answer is you got a message from when you're talking about faith and belief and reinforcement, right? That could be one answer could be your higher self or your higher guides gave you this vision and showed you the balloon saying, I'm with you, we're together, look for my signs, right? So it could be a sign to look for signs, right?
Right. Well, a friend of mine, we've spoken to about different, and I can't um, think of anything offhand per se.
Yeah.
Uh, but where it's like, was that premonition
Right. So that's another thing. Was it
or
precognition, right?
did we manifest this?
That you are exactly right. This is where that dynamic you go, wait a minute, did I foresee it being there or did I manifest it being there?
Yeah.
Or was I guided to look for it? Or maybe my subconscious knew it was there, but my conscious mind didn't see it. It was always there, right? But your subconscious sees 11 million impressions per second, and your conscious only gets 50, I think is what the number is, right? So it might have already been there, but you weren't connecting the two things. It could be some sort of message from a loved one that's not here, right? Because they loved blue balloons. It could be some sort of subconscious message like you get in a dream. I do a lot of dream analysis, and I'll get a symbol and I'll look in the dream going, well, what does a blue balloon mean? Right? And blue means this, and a balloon means this, and maybe it's a message. Oh, wow, this is a message that I need to look out for, hot air or something. I don't remember
Yeah.
what it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But see, that's where it gets really interesting, right? What is the answer? And I can't answer that for you other than to say that there are a lot of answers, a lot of possible explanations. And that the more we start looking at those explanations, then we can start really getting more aware of our dreams and our wishes on how they might be coming to play, right? And how they might be coming true. So that's where some of the science gets into that, right? The subconscious is the psychology of it, mind, body, spirit. Is your body aware of something that your mind isn't aware? Is it your spiritual aspect of yourself that's connected? All of that.
Yeah, so I had a friend, she took her life in 2017 and this just popped in while we were talking and
Yeah.
she so there were three suicides this particular summer.
Wow.
And I mean it was just strange, right? They weren't all I wasn't really close to all three. I was close to my friend. But I knew them kind of close, within a circle, right within 7 degrees or whatever. there was a young man who'd gone to our kids, my kids' Waldorf school, and then there was somebody else in between. I forget. But right around the time of each one, it was very strange. I saw a dead bird with one wing up, pointing up towards the sky. So the last dead bird I saw with its, I was like, well, this time my friend Tammy was in rehab, so I thought she was safe. Well, so I thought she was in rehabilitation. She had come home, and little did we know, had come home to just and not told anybody to take her life. And but yeah, that third bird. And I remember thinking when I saw the third bird, well, Tammy's safe. I wonder
Mm.
who is I literally was like, I wonder who's going to die, but it was Tammy. It ended up being my friend Tammy. But it's interesting how it's like, okay, I don't know. It's weird, Brownell,
Yeah.
because there were other things like in relationship to her passing that and maybe you can understand this because other people, I don't know that other people totally like I felt like she told me in so many ways she was leaving. And I knew that of all the people in my life, that she would be the one to take her life if I knew anybody at that particular time. And I think I just had a feeling like the whole time she wasn't going to make it. And it's interesting how the universe connects people um, because we didn't even weren't friends for that long. But I felt like she was a real kindred spirit. And she we had both applied to become marriage and family therapist at the Louisville Presbyterian Seminary here, and it's a tuition-free program. And I didn't get accepted, and she did, but and we had knowingly, like I was looking at the one, she was looking at the University of Louisville's Kent, the Kent School of Social Work. Anyway, needless to say, bring it back real quick. Um, we had to go and sit in after going through the application process at the seminary um, in a class and spend the day there and eat lunch. And I kid you not, the class was on suicide.
Wow.
So we had to sit through on a random day in October on a class on suicide. Jump forward, my hairdresser, like I knew she was struggling. She seemed to, be doing better at times and you would, regress. And I had this hairdresser who gave me a book on, it's called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. She channels her
Yeah, I love
mother.
that book.
Yeah.
I love that book. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this woman, then she gives me another book. I mean, it was just wild. Like, and in the meantime, her favorite song was, oh my goodness, it's Angel from Montgomery,
Yeah.
make me an angel.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I mean,
Bonnie
like the whole,
Raitt.
yeah.
I love Bonnie
And
Raitt.
so when she did cross over, I just like the message. I mean, like all these like weirdly clear messages were there, and I don't know, it was just interesting because I
Well,
do
and it's also
really,
somehow you were being prepared, right? I mean
yeah.
that what and this can gets into territory that some people have strong opinions, and honestly if they want to offer their comments, I would love to see what people think, right? Because I do think different have people have different opinions, but as to whether that was predetermined, like they had an exit plan from the
Mhm.
beginning, or if where that fate versus free will debate comes in, right? Which we can go down that road if you want, but the because I write about that a lot actually in my first book, but the but whatever it was, somehow somewhere some guidance was giving you preparation, and therefore it was not as um, devastating, I would assume, for you as if it had come out of nowhere and you had gone, oh, what could I do? You kind of know, like, okay, I did all I could. I was, got the and you probably, if you're like me, I'm not one of those people who thinks, oh, people who take their lives are, tormented in hell forever. I think that they're go to a healing place and that they're given love, right? I don't think it's a, you know, there are lessons that we all learn, right, from different aspects of that, but I don't
Yeah,
feel like
and
it's this prison sentence, in
yeah,
damnation kind of thing.
I'm with you, and I think I mean beyond just that, I was reading so many books around that time. Now with her, she did speak to. We had a counselor here who had died at 40, and she had a near-death experience and came back and was a fabulous counselor. She had an ashram here in Crescent Hill, and she was asking, she was very curious, like, if I do this, she asked the question, if I do this,
Huh.
what, and um, by all means, just to pause, I do think anybody who might be struggling, please be sure to reach out to whomever necessary, if you are
Oh, of
struggling
course.
with
Yeah,
it.
that. I'm not saying just
No, I
because it's
know.
not
Yeah.
eternal damnation that anybody should do it because there's
Yeah,
lessons
no.
involved.
Yeah,
But
but I'm
yeah.
with you. I agree. And, I was reading messages from the masters, the Brian Weiss books. There's
Yeah.
a lot there. And but I do feel like just in this, yes, very
I'm just
interesting
thinking
way.
about your experience, right?
Yeah,
With
like
different types.
definitely I felt prepared.
Yeah,
And it wasn't um I wasn't I wasn't necessarily shocked.
right.
Um at that time. But it just, I think when we are again paying attention to, the things and how I just think it's just amazing how I mean, would you say you believe in God?
I do. I write the book in such a way that you don't have to, right?
Yeah.
In other words, you can be into in fact, one of the things I love about the whole concept of wishing is that you can be totally atheist, no idea, not or agnostic, or you can be super religious, and we all have wishing in common. Every culture, everywhere in the world, every group wishes, right? Even the most skeptical people probably have wished and maybe still do some wishing. And when you understand the science, then all of a sudden it can bring the science and the religion together. That being said, I do believe what I call the cosmic collaboration, and I believe in a higher power and obviously a higher realm because I write about that in my woo-woo books. And so I'm also really open to all the different definitions of what God would be. So my personal view is it's probably an energy of love, um, and an intelligent energy of love. I'm not one of those people who think, oh, it's good and evil all together. No, God is love. That's the loving end of the spectrum. So I always be careful telling people, be careful when you pray to the universe because you're praying to everything. When you pray to God, you're praying to love. You're praying to that higher energy and that higher power. You don't want to invite in, the darker stuff. But we're going off into all kinds of tangents. And you're right. We don't want to tell people, oh, it's okay to do it. It's not okay. But and there, it's just a momentary decision for a lifetime, permanent decision. And there's so much. Like one of the things I think that concepts that's worth mentioning here that I actually talk about in the book. My first book is called Five Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. So actually, people say everything happens for a reason. I wrote the book on it. But I don't bring this concept in by this definition, but I do in the newest book, as I call it reverse optimism. And that means when you can look back and go, okay, I know why this thing happened and this thing happened and this thing happened. All these things happened to lead me to this other place, right? And so, and that's one of the things I would like more people to understand and grasp is when you can see the things that may not have been what you wished for, or may have been a really difficult time. They can often take you to a higher place and a better learning when you can look back at them. And then the next time you go through something bad, you have enough experience to go, okay, I know that I know enough to know that this actually, if I take this the right way, I can take it to a better place. So, because any reason that the five reasons why bad things happen, what they all have in common is to get you to change something. So it's some message from somewhere. What are you going to change? And then you make that change. Or, oh, I wouldn't have gone down this path if this thing hadn't happened. So if anybody's struggling with anything, that would be the advice I have is like, what's the lesson in there? What needs to change? And you'll make that change, and then you can get right back on track and have a happier life. So
Absolutely. I mean, most people I find it takes I know for me, most definitely there, if I look back and I haven't heard it called or referred to as reverse optimism, but I can definitely look back on my life and think, oh, and that I talk about in my book, uh, different decisions I would have made. I didn't really want to go to the University of Kentucky. I wanted to get away from my friends, from high school. I
Right.
wanted to branch out and I didn't. But had I not done that, then I might not actually have the two kids I've got, right?
Yeah.
And I, and so that was a really kind of a dark year for me of like Prozac and I failed out of my freshman year, but it was again a learning opportunity for me. And when I actually can look back at some of I mean, I was like sinking.
Mhm.
And I remember I created basically a mantra poster board. And I'd had this breakup. I was just like a mess, total mess. I guess my
Mhm.
parents had just gotten divorced. I was glad about it, but on the same token, like divorce is hard, whether or not you know it's the correct thing for your parents or even if you can totally understand why it's taking place, it's just not always easy. And so I had created this mantra board and then I attached myself to Gloria Gaynor's song, I Will Survive.
Yeah.
So I had the Audible, I was singing it, I was looking at it, and I pulled myself out of a flunking semester and then I left that school. But it took me, I'm like, oh shit, my parents are gonna kill me. They're gonna, they're gonna quit paying for college. I better
Right.
get my act together.
Right. And think of what you learned from that. And so, therefore, you can go back to those experiences and go, look what I learned. This is what got me, got me down this path. And, last year I published 4 books, and one of the books I published is called The Hero's Playbook, and it follows the hero's journey. And one of the aspects of the hero's journey is, and if anybody knows, it's Joseph Campbell. They call it the monomyth. Um, Star Wars was written actually to follow step by step the framework of the hero's journey, right? And the whole message there is the hero's got to go through some difficult times in order to become the hero, right? You start out and you're like kind of figuring out what you're doing. You get this called adventure, but you learn some things along the way, and nobody wants a perfect hero from the beginning. And nobody wants to read a story where the hero's like, oh, yeah, I went on this adventure. Everything went great. Or boy meets girl, fall in love, married, happy. That's not a very exciting story from a storyteller standpoint, right? So, and then we look at our own lives and think, well, those big struggles, those are the things that, you've got to work your muscles in order for them to get strong so that you can use them for the next challenge and the next challenge. And those are the people we admire. Those are what we call the heroes, are the people who really do face those challenges, and make themselves stronger.
So okay, let's just kind of dive into like how you have built with wishing having science behind it.
Right.
And many people turn to prayer and meditation or manifestation or um, you- uh, anyway, right? And the tantric practices of sex magic, it all works. We're working to me
Right.
with the same field, right?
Right. It's all
It's
within the same framework. It's just another way to kind of, the thing I like about wishing is it's something we all know, yet it is, like you said at the very beginning, people think of it, oh yeah, blow out candles, or I just wished and it poofed out there. But then you had an awareness that a wish turned into something that actually manifested. And it wasn't like I went through a manifestation practice to find that TV, but it was more than a prayer, right? There was something
right.
more to it than a prayer, right? And so, and that's what I kind of like is like, okay, let's, it's not like I'm trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to offer something, because I did like, even the word wish is just this beautiful word, right? It's like a release. It's like an energy, like I'm letting it go. And then looking at the science, and the more you understand the science, you can start adding. You realize if you have a ritual, and whether it's a time on the clock, and if it's every day, and you can remind yourself, then neuroplasticity clicks in. Then you remind yourself every day, then reticular activating system is going to be looking for that blue balloon or whatever you're trying to manifest, right? And if you start understanding psychology of the subconscious and the conscious, and how your subconscious might sabotage you from your wish because there's something conflicting on that level, like all of those little sciences along the way can keep making it stronger and stronger and stronger so that you can really understand your wish to a different level, and help it manifest. And I get into like the what I call the four responses to a wish, which is yes, no, wait, or something better. And sometimes wait is the best answer. You think you want it now, but you weren't ready. Or maybe the world wasn't ready. Maybe there is a better timing. You want, if it, oh, now I'm glad this wish didn't happen then because I needed this before I could do this, right? So that's when you start really understanding the nuances. And I think that's the framework that I'm offering. Could somebody be very, very much into the manifestation movement and read my book and just change wish for manifestation? Sure. I think it will help them in that aspect. Can somebody say, I'm not into any of that? But I like science. And I'm like, wow, learning about science to help me get the things I want in life. Then it can offer them that framework too. So it's a way of kind of pulling all that together.
So then does your book break down how to build a wish practice?
Yes, it definitely talks about that. And then I also have, like you mentioned, the Cosmic Wish Experiment, which is a way for people to be wishing together. Because I think that if there's anything we've missed, and I do think that those other practices generally miss this, is the whole idea of collective wishing. And collective wishing rituals have been a key driver of survival since the dawn of humanity, but we've missed that. We're not wishing together anymore.
Hmm.
And so if we can start kind of collecting and having people, whether it's five people wishing the same wish, then you're starting to feel more power. And even if the wish is something simple, like I wish the world was a better place for animals, or I wish people would understand how to this particular breathing technique because I think it's going to help everybody get to this level of healing or awareness or whatever. um, then I think we have so much more power. I mean, there's actually mathematics and formulas of that's based on research about how much more powerful our wishes become when we wish together. So that's a big aspect of that.
So this friend, are you familiar with Lynne McTaggart's book, The
Yes.
Power? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. So she's like,
the field
she,
and the intention and everything. And she's got the intention
I
experiment.
haven't read it. I haven't read it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when you texted, like it was literally on the heels of getting this text from a friend who's like, I want us to do her Power of Eight focused intentional meditation every week. But it sounds very similar in nature, coming together as a collective.
I quote her and that's very interesting research. There are some other interesting studies about people wishing together. And might call it meditation, you might call it wishing, whatever. The TM, the 1% solution
Yeah.
from TM. There's all those aspects of it. Again, I'm looking at these sciences and I'm saying let's kind of can apply it to wishing. And you can use whatever other word other than wishing together. I just like wishing because there is a playfulness to it. There is an innocence to it, and it's really important that it's fun. Like there's some really interesting science, but we need to have fun while we're doing it. And so like the activities I have for the Cosmic Wish Experiment are fun little games that are teaching you and helping you kind of strengthen your wish and understand your wish, but do it in a fun way. Why can't it be fun? No?
No. Yeah, I think that so many of us as adults, and it's definitely something I touch on in my book too, is just that being able to find that pleasure state that one might have been attached, been more connected to as a child, and
Yeah.
we lose that the older we get. It just like slowly like gets put away on a shelf, and I don't think we consciously do it. I think it's kind of a combination of reasons why we just kind of tuck, that element away. It's like we're supposed to grow up and be adults and produce, and then we miss that joy.
Yeah.
So, why not integrate more fun and
Right.
excitement? And I like when you say the word wish, as you said, it's almost like well, first of all, you think about, I mean, I know I do think about blowing out candles.
Yeah.
But it's wish, it's like letting it go. It's almost like you're
Isn't it a
letting it
beautiful
go.
word?
Yeah.
Right. Phonetically, it's got an energy to it,
Mhm.
right? It's not just, and like goal is like this, oh, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and even prayer is kind of a hard word, but wish is just this beautiful word.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so is that something like, can you just give me like a teaser? Do we, on Mondays, we wish? Is there something that like, do you, and I know like when, like, I think again, I know that in some of the work I've read about, inviting in or the secret, all these different, right?
Right.
Um, you got to be really clear.
Yeah.
Like you can't just say, I'm wishing for the guy to be my, well, what kind of guy? What does he
well,
have? Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, because otherwise you might get him and he's not like what you wanted.
Right. In fact, there's some also interesting science behind that kind of thing. I very clearly say that your wish needs to follow the three P's. It needs to be peaceful, positive, and purposeful. Okay. And that's how you make your wish, right? The energy you're using in the wish and what you're wishing for. So you're wishing for, not against, which makes it positive. And so and I've got a children's book where I've got the before picture of a kind of a preteen girl and her little sister's trying to get her attention. And the preteen girl's got books in front of her. She's like, I wish my sister would leave me alone. She's driving, I'm too busy, right? But
Hmm.
she reframes the wish because that's a wishing against, right? But she reframes the wish to a positive. Says, I wish I had more time for my sister. And she'd find time for her sister, right? I mean, it's a beautiful little thing, but there's science behind why it works that way. Our brain can't work against. Protests are great for getting people together, but they're not moving us forward because we need to be wishing for, right? We need a vision. We need Martin Luther King had a dream, right? That's the same thing as this beautiful wish because everybody saw this vision that he laid out for us. And then purposeful is when you're wishing for something outside of yourself that's bigger than yourself for others and that benefits others. There's also things called mirror neurons. People come in and you start attracting people to help you manifest that wish. You start bringing all these things in. And so that's one aspect of it is to use the three P's. And the wish should be the three P's. And then if you want to engage neuroplasticity, you need to do it every day.
Hmm.
And the easy way to do that is to kind of go back to anthropology and say, what's my ritual? I've got one person says, every time I see a mirror, I'm going to make my wish, right? Somebody else could say, I see 11:11 on the clock, or 4:44 or 4:20 somebody has for a hemp initiative. They want to have a hemp initiative and they say, okay, 4:20 is when they make their wish.
Hmm.
Something ideally, somebody else wants when they see or hear an animal because they're wishing for a better world for animals. That is reminding you. And when you do it every day, after a while, neuroplasticity will tell you that you're starting part it's just part of who you are then. And like we said, the reticular activating system is going to be looking for that. And the other part that I found that I've just been the most fascinated by is the default mode network. Are you familiar with what that is? You are, but probably didn't know the terminology. And that is when your brain, you think when you zone out that your brain is turned off, but what actually happens is certain parts of your brain turn off and other parts of your brain turn on. And I have a story in one of my books about the writer Aaron Sorkin. I don't know if you know, he wrote The Social Network and The West Wing and The American President and A Few Good Men. He wrote like major movies and TV. And he says when he's in writing mode, he may take 7 showers a day. And what he's doing is he's activating the default mode network. There's a part of your brain that's going to be looking for those ideas and solutions when you're not paying attention. And you can be saying that's connecting to something outside of yourself, right? I mean, Bob Dylan, one of my favorite quotes of all time is when Bob Dylan said, the song was there before I came along. I just had to write it down, right?
Hmm.
So your default mode network, when you start understanding how that works and how to activate it, and I'm working on some really interesting stuff to do that, then you're going to be looking for solutions, those ideas like, wow, this idea just came to me and I don't know where that came from. But there's a part of your brain that's activated. So when you understand those aspects and then you're doing it every day, and then there's a 10-minute activity every week just to help you kind of like, okay, is it wants versus needs, or little games to understand a little bit more of the science. Then that's really the best way to do it, is that you are starting to train your brain to look for those answers and to find those solutions. And the more you do it together, the more powerful you are.
So, okay, so w when you're in this default mode, what did you say? Default mode, what?
network.
Network. Does the left side of your brain shut down?
There, there is I'm not talking left brain, right brain for
Okay.
that particular thing. There's different parts of the brain, and I'm not the scientist, so I'd have to look it up. I don't have it off the top of my head. Um, there is some other stuff related to left brain, right brain that I don't know if you've read Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, her book, My Stroke of Insight. She did a TED talk as well.
No, but I am familiar with it.
Yeah. And so with her story, she's a brain neuroanatomist and she had a stroke in her left brain. And so all she had was right brain. And she knew the brain enough to go, this is what's happening to my brain while was going through this experience of a stroke. And there are things that she had awareness of that she wouldn't have had and she didn't have before. Like I know she talks about being in the hospital while they're treating her, and she could hear every conversation in the whole hallway of the hospital. Versus before, there'd be the left brain would be discerning which one's priority, the right brain was going crazy. So there is some of that. There is some of that kind of nuance as well. But the default mode network, and again, I can't tell you off the top of my head which parts turn on, but when the others turn off. But it's you have to turn off that conscious trying thinking. Is when you're not trying, you're looking for that word, what's that word, and then boom, you go in the other room and you're making dinner and that word comes to you. It's when you can kind of turn off that one part, the other part turns on.
Yeah, I guess I think about like when you said the Bob Dylan quote. I I guess, like to me it comes from the just source energy, all coming from the same place that we're truly conduits for. I mean, for me, what connects us all.
Right.
I kind of see it like, well, I used to explain it as a glass, like if this glass broke and it shattered all over this room, like, some might end up on the floor, on the table, whatever. It could be in the dog's water bowl. They're all different sizes, different shapes, different edges, when it's shattered, but it's still the glass, right? And so anything and all thought and all things are this glass, like we are the glass.
Right.
That's kind of the way like I see this, like in the Akashic field, like the place where all memories are stored, past, present, and future. Like there really is, it's just this incredible oneness that we can't quite ever and will never be able to fully wrap our heads around, but that we're truly the conduit and like getting into that flow state, the
Right.
words show up for our book or whatever we're writing or our music or any creation that we have. I guess that's kind of the way I see that. So I guess I would be curious, like what going into this default mode network, like what brain waves. I
Right.
I would think that we could get there. And I also wonder if, like, I drove Lyft and Uber, and when you get in the shower, and this is just, I'm just thinking out loud. You
Yeah.
get in the shower, you're not really thinking about, I know I'm not. I go through my routine. Things are
Right.
happening, right? And ideas come. And I have found many times that the perfect idea will come to me when I am driving
Right.
because I don't really have to think about how to get to work.
Right.
So I'm doing something and then something else just like boom, right? I get
That's right.
into sort of a different state. Now it's not all the time, but I feel like there are other, showering works, but that we can all get there.
Yes. We all know the feeling of that. The challenge is, and I'm actually kind of started working on this the other day, like maybe that I can create a meditation that can get you there because there's a difference between, a meditative state like TM where you're trying to get rid of all thoughts,
Right.
right? Right. That's one aspect. Well, that's not the default mode network, right? That's trying to release every thought and not attach to any thought. And that's important to do it sometimes, right? To
Yeah.
get clear.
Mhm.
Um, and when you're talking about the connecting to something outside of yourself, I always say when I'm writing, especially when I'm writing fiction, but it can be nonfiction too. But is like I'm like this specialized radio that's tuning into a frequency. That frequency is out there for everybody. I can just tune into it. I'm kind of the one to be tuning into it to write it down. Um, but the default mode network is so there's different kinds of meditation, and there's also the hypnagogic state, which is somewhat related to the default mode network, which is that it's more like you get visualizations or daydreams, that are in a certain aspect. And that's related, but it's also really different. So if you're going through a guided meditation, you could be guided somewhere, but that's not necessarily activating the default mode network because it's not turning off the things that are seeking the answers, if that makes sense. But like Thomas Edison used to do a thing where he'd sit in a chair and hold a steel ball in his hand. And as soon as he'd start to drift off, he'd drop the ball and then his ideas would come to him. So he had that technique to do it. So there's some really interesting things. I think I'm still in that exploring mode about that whole idea of what that default mode network is. But as a creative person, that is when you can be tapping in and getting that information and those ideas that can be opening things up. So it's pretty cool.
So you think about Thomas Edison holding the ball. It's like, okay, what made him think I'm going to hold the ball until I doze and the ball drops, right? Was that intuition, or did he sort of reverse what do you call
Optimism.
optimism, right? Like when he looked back, whoa, every time that happened, I had a genius idea.
Well, he's doing Aaron Sorkin in the shower, right? I mean, it's his way of doing Aaron Sorkin in the shower, right? So,
Yeah,
we all know what that's like, though. It's like how does our brain go back and remember that thing
yeah.
that word we couldn't remember or that person's name or something. And then it can be even more. For me, it's when I'm at the gym. Like I do 90 minutes on the elliptical machine every day. And so I might be watching a video or reading a book or something, but my brain is still working on the other thing that I was working on before. And all of a sudden these ideas will flow to me. And so or in the middle of the night, my voice recorder is right there because if I don't capture it, then it's gone. Right. So you do have to learn how to know how to capture it without losing it. So there's like just science is fun. What
It,
can
it
I
is,
say?
it is. It's really interesting. And I love being able to bring the science in because I don't probably question the science. I don't need the science, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I kind of go with this like guttural, like how does my body feel intuition, but many want that, and the woo-woo works, right? So when we can, bring awareness to the science that woo-woo works.
That's right. And we can give it to the people who are skeptical. And, I even
Yes,
have a chapter on, fun with skeptics, right? Because skeptics might come in and go, okay, I don't believe all that. Well, here's the science. Go to the study, come back and tell me what you got, right? Give them something to work with so that they can start looking at, well, how do I activate the default mode network? And somebody might be listening to go, okay, I'm going to research more on that and I'm going to figure out a technique. And if they're listening and they have ideas and they want to share it in comments, then tell us, right? We both want to hear this because this is all, I'm the way I look at it, as I said in the beginning, I'm not a scientist. I'm just learning all this stuff. So if somebody else has better ideas or more ideas or, suggestions or thoughts, I'm always wanting to keep, because that's what science does. It keeps learning more every day. It's not like, oh, we got the answer and that's it. It's no, 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 no. We're constantly challenging what's new. And the more we can give that framework and we know the feeling of taking the shower when we remember the name, but it's fun to know that there's actually a brain part of us that's working at that and how that works from a scientific standpoint. So to me, it's fun pulling it all together.
oh, for sure. So, okay, so have you worked with any groups specifically with a specific wish?
We're
And
just getting started. So I've got a few that are kind of, hovering. I'm going to be doing something new. Look out for my YouTube channel because that's going to help a lot of people. And I'm going to be doing some things that are going to make this more fun and more exciting and interesting to diff. But I mean, I just started it a couple months ago and it's still brand new. So we're still looking for things. And we get some people that are hovering, but nothing activated yet. So
Okay,
it's all new.
so you are hoping to create these cosmic wish circles
Yes.
all over.
Yeah.
And what would be cool is to see, each cosmic wish circle, come together, whether it's in person or virtually, right? Because with Zoom today, like you can do this from
Right.
your home and get together with a collective. And then, like each group is working on their own, and what you see is like each group is working on their wish, whatever that is. And it could be even like the way I see it is even geared towards maybe one person in the group. I don't know if that's,
Yeah.
if somebody's faced with a diagnosis of something, our wish for our group is this member to blah, 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 whatever. Just,
Yeah. As long as it's peaceful, positive, and purposeful,
right.
it can work. Yeah.
And maybe even building that in with a greater wish, maybe I don't know how that could work. Like I'm just trying to like think out loud, like maybe, each
Well,
week.
let's say it's a diagnosis, and we can say people with this diagnosis, we wish for this person and people with this diagnosis to
Yeah.
find better path toward healing and and a cure or whatever that is. And then all of a sudden you got all those people doing research and looking into it and finding other people that have it. And then, like you said, like the car you see everywhere, except you're going to find people everywhere that have gone through this, learned this, accomplished this, healed from this, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And
So
then
yeah, that's the wish.
yeah, and then you have these little circles. Gosh, it would be amazing. Like you have all these little circles forming
Yeah.
and then come together, right, collectively
Yeah.
with the same wish, right, or a greater, more broader
It
wish.
can be world peace and it can be a safe neighborhood. I mean, it can be, like a neighborhood watch can be
Yeah.
just we want our neighborhood to have more safety or something. I mean, it can be, at whatever scale that people want. And it's simple, fun, and free for anybody listening. Buying my book is optional. I love it if they do, but they don't have to. It's all pretty well explained when people sign up.
So, there was a fellow I had on the podcast. I think it was, golly, it might have been already been almost 2 years ago. I can't remember. It might have been last spring. His name was Dr. Mauro Zapatera. He is a Harvard, I forget, I forget, he's not a neurosurgeon, but
Neuroscientist,
neurologist.
neurophysiologist,
Yeah.
who knows? Yeah.
And he had an experience out west, and I believe he was in New Mexico, where, what he realized or came to understand was that, the cerebral spinal fluid in the base of the spine moves up the spine to the pineal gland. And that often, what helps move that is breath, right? Movement, because and it's the same fluid that the cranial sacral therapists work with. And I just think about, if we could all be just so intentional with the way we move through the world, and the changes that we could see are just so incredible.
Yeah.
And I mean, I am a truther for sure, and would be, what many would call a conspiracy theorist, but I do think that we are incredibly powerful as
Yeah.
humans, and the they definitely wants us uh, unactualized in that way. They don't want us to recognize the power that we truly have as human beings, as spiritual beings, and
I
that we
talked about
really
that with
do.
David Hawkins. Are you familiar with the David Hawkins research, Power versus Force?
Is he also the guy that wrote,
He talks about the levels of energy, the lower levels and the higher
yeah,
energy.
and then but he wrote something else, right? It's got a white cover with a yellow, um, letting go. No, he, who am
I'm
I
not sure.
thinking of?
I'm not sure. But anyway, the point is, I was just agreeing with you in terms of that we're being forced into a lower level energy of despair and anger, and if we need to rise above. And that's honestly why I did this, why I pushed so hard to create this, and why I worked so hard to do this experiment is let's rise up here so that we can't be brought down to that lower energy, and then we are in our power and we can make things happen. I mean, that's the whole intention here. So
Yeah, gosh, I'm really upset I can't remember this book because I bet it's this he letting go. Let's see, he'll The Pathway to Surrender, David R. Hawkins. Have you read that one?
I have not read
Um,
one.
and he talks about
That
the
looks like
different
him though. He has those kind of graphics. So yeah.
yeah, he in this book he talks about all the different emotions
Yeah,
and their vibrational frequency and
that's
where
right.
they yeah.
Yeah,
So I haven't read the one you're speaking of, but that's the one I have.
that's
And
the same kind of thing. And there are a few other people who have a similar framework, but that's important to know that those energies, and that's when you're making these wish and you're making it together and it's peaceful, positive, and purposeful, you're in those higher levels. You're almost, untouchable. You can't be brought down to those other levels. You can rise everybody up instead.
yeah.
And that's why I did it, frankly,
Yeah, so
is to
that's,
try
I
to
mean, like
pull
the
us up
bigger
there.
mission, right, is that
Yeah,
we really can transmute all this spunk out there if we could just access, and I think I love that about your work. I think we all need to get wishing,
yeah.
and
That's
we
what
need to
that's what
be,
my wish.
yeah, your wish is that, and that, that our wishes are peaceful, positive, and purposeful. Because I do think, we can, like, oh, I was ready to kill my kid the other day. It's like, I'm broke. I'm like, if I hear that one more time, right? Okay. Like from a body worker standpoint.
Right.
And are you familiar with Veda Austin's work and
I'm
uh,
not.
Dr. Oh, this is my perimenopause brain. Not Mauro Zapatera, Masaru Emoto
Oh yeah.
and his work on the
The
water.
water crystals. Yeah.
Yeah, so Veda Austin's is similar, and she's
Yeah.
taking like images and literally like the image of a flower, and then she freezes the water with that flower essence in it, the flower, and then or just the flower essence in it, then she freezes it, then she takes just that right before thawing and frozen, she takes an image of that, and it looks like the flower, or it
Yeah.
looks like a person's um silhouette, or I mean, it's amazing work, but when you understand that the fascia is 78 to 80% water. Like
Mhm.
what we are speaking to ourselves
Right.
has a huge influence on just our overall body of water, really.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if you're, saying negative
And
things,
well, and again, the science is it's wishing against and not for. If he says, I wish I had more money, he's going to find more money,
right?
right?
Yeah.
But he's basically saying, I wish I could stay broke, because when he's calling himself broke, that's wishing against. Wish for, I wish I had more money. I guarantee he's going to start finding ways to either save money, make money, something, right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so, and then that's going to, I mean, but he has to do it. Here's the problem is he's probably programmed himself that his neuroplasticity is that his brain says, I'm broke. He has to repeat the wish every day for at least 4 weeks, ideally 8 weeks. Just make that wish. I wish I had more money every day. Just tell him to do that and watch the change. It'll be really
Well,
powerful.
and I don't know if this is one of the pitfalls or problems that one might run into is like if you continue to say that to yourself, that will be your reality, whether or not that is and whether that's true or not. I
Well, that's what I'm
strongly
saying. I wish I had more money, is now I get into more, and I know we're going to run out of time, but I get into more about getting to your wants versus your needs. Like I was
Mhm.
talking with somebody the other day and they said, I wish for $1 million. I said, what do you want the $1 million for? And then his all of a sudden that can be a much more purposeful wish, right? So if he says, I wish I had more money so I can do this, and if it helps others, boom, you just engaged several more sciences, right?
Right.
Um, and that's important, because you start, if he says, I wish I had more money so I can buy a car, so I can take my girlfriend on a date, then all of a sudden, I'm just putting words, I don't know anything about your
Yeah,
son,
no.
but then all of a sudden, maybe he's got a friend that's got a car, or that can help him work on a car that he found. I mean, that takes you toward a positive thing. And there are other people when it's purposeful, because I want to take my neighbor to his job that he can't go to, or whatever that is. Then people will start helping you, and there are mirror neurons. When you tell your story, this is why I want this thing, then you're starting to activate other people to mirror that, to help you on the way. Again, this is just really, real cool science stuff. How simple that is to especially more you get to the need versus the want, you make it purposeful, then you've just multiplied it like crazy. I know we could probably talk for
Yeah.
days on this. This is really
Yeah.
fun.
Well, so where can people find your work? Where can they sign up to be a cosmic wish experiment circle leader?
Yeah, well, you can find my website, brownelllandrum.com. I'm the only Brownell Landrum, so you can find me a lot of places, and all the social media and YouTube channel. Cosmic Wish Experiment is the site where you can go and sign up, and it's very simple. It's all automated. You just go in and you say, okay, I want to start a wish circle. You decide on your wish. You got to have your ritual, right? So what are you going to do that's going to remind everybody in the wish circle to be wishing for that wish, ideally every day? And then you basically share that what your code is. Like if your code is Cosmic Wish, or whatever, then other people know to sign up for that particular circle so that they can sign up, and they just go to the same place and say, I want to join a circle. This is the one I want to join, and they can join, and it's all automated.
And then
So,
they
and then
can find your
the way
book.
I do it is like I set it all up, and if people need support, I'm here to help support them to get them out there. So, there's a lot of little, I mean, so simple. Yet I also have training. Like if you have any questions, here's this and here's this and here's this. So all of that's all part of the program. There's a tracking system to make it gamification, so you get points and
Oh, that's
all kinds
cool.
of cute stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, fun.
so it's really really
And
fun.
then, and your books, are they available on your website or on Amazon? Where can we find
Yeah,
your
they're
book?
available on Amazon. You can get the children's book that I mentioned, as well as the Art and Science of Wishing. And then I have metaphysical novels. So I have like the Love Story to the Universe I mentioned. And I also have a trilogy I came out with, this epic reincarnation mystery and love story. So if people are into that,
Ooh, I love
it's like,
that.
it's about a famous couple from history who's reunited today to fulfill a prophecy. So it's kind of like a Da Vinci Code Outlander metaphysical book, and other books you'll see, the hero's journey and all that stuff. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, lots of stuff out there.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it has. And then I'm going to make sure that we definitely introduce the cosmic wish theory. Maybe we'll start a circle and then just kind of maybe blend the two of what my girlfriend's wanting to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like just
So
make like,
that would be a great way to pull it all together. I'd love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.